All right, we're going to have a look at what's going on in the UK at the moment. Of course, I bring Lisa Goddard back in our Brisbane studio, and of course, Matt Cunningham, who is there in our Darwin studio. Now, guys, this is headed for a very interesting climax on Thursday when Britons go to the polls. Now, there's a story on the front page of tomorrow's Australian, which suggests that it's going to be a lot closer than what the pollsters are tipping. There's some private polling in the UK, Matt Cunningham, which suggests this could be a very closely run election, suggesting that possibly the Labor Party could get into a majority situation, a majority sort of election situation. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that polls these days are probably not worth the paper they're written on. I mean, if we go back to 2016, I think the polls said that Remain was going to win that referendum vote, and Brexit won pretty comfortably. The polls said that Hillary Clinton was a 99% chance of winning the US presidential election in 2016, and Donald Trump won. The polls said that Scott Morrison and the coalition was going to lose the May election here to Labor, and the opposite turned out to be true. So I wouldn't be putting too much weight on any of the polls. I do know that this is probably the most important election that Britain has had in modern history. I mean, if Labor does manage to cobble together a minority government, it's going to be, really back to square one on this, because, they're going to, we're going to see then, another referendum follow, and, what will the past 4 years have all been for? So I think it's going to be a really interesting election to watch. I think, really only mugs tip the outcome of elections, as we've seen over the past few years, and therefore I'm going to nail my sails to the mast and say I'm going to predict a very narrow Tory victory.
Now, Boris Johnson, quite an eccentric chap at the best of times, he's pulled together an ad that's already attracted a lot of attention online. It's sort of a spoof of the Love Actually movie. Let's have a quick look at that.
Enough. Enough. Let's get this done.
Well, there he is, Lisa Goddard. Boris Johnson, there's no doubt about him. He's an interesting character, isn't he?
Love him or hate him, in a period when you no doubt a lot of the Poms are very fatigued when it comes to election and politics. At least he's putting some colour into it. And, in these final stages now of campaigning, the last thing either of them need to do is blunder, stumble, say the wrong thing. And we saw Boris caught out today when he was shown a photograph. They were talking about the healthcare system, and he was shown a photograph of a 4-year-old boy who was sleeping on the floor of a hospital at Leeds. And he really didn't have a response. I think every well-trained politician knows the first thing you do in that situation is show empathy. And he just, for seconds there, stumbled, couldn't quite get his answer together. And look, he's being attacked for that. So, on one hand, you've got him sort of, put him some laughter and a bit of levity into this whole campaign. On the other hand, he's absolutely going to cop it over his response or poor response to that photograph.
Hey, Matt, I thought Troy Bramston wrote an interesting piece in today's Oz where he basically said that Corbyn would be a disaster for the UK. He's, he's so far left that it's not funny, that he's promising free dental, free health, free this, free that. He's going to send the country broke. And yet he's still being talked about, certainly the private polling suggesting that he's still in the race. Interesting stuff.
And interesting times that we live in, Glee. So, you know, there are a lot of people who believe that if Bernie Sanders had have run for the Democrats instead of Hillary Clinton in 2016, that Sanders would have won. I think that Corey Bernardi's one of those people. I mean, I think that, you know, in these times we are seeing, in many cases, leaders, politicians who are further to the far left or the far right, really having appeal with people. I think there are a lot of people, young people in particular, who see some appeal in Jeremy Corbyn and his far left views. I mean, you only had to see, I think it was after the most recent UK election where, you know, there were all those young people featured in videos, you know, saying, you know, there was only one Jeremy Corbyn. He was like some kind of cult hero. But I think that Troy Bramson, you know, he often gets these things right, and I think his warnings are probably good ones. But I don't think that means that Jeremy Corbyn is no chance of winning this election. I think it's going to be a tightly run race. I will say about that ad of Boris Johnson's, I reckon that is the best political ad I've ever seen. Whether that will have any impact or not, I'm not sure, but it certainly made me laugh. I think it was effective. He's ever the salesman, Boris Johnson. It just depends whether people in the UK are going to be buying what he's selling.
Indeed, Matt Cunningham. Thank you for joining us tonight on the front page. Lisa Goddard, always a pleasure to have you on the front page.